We've talked a lot over the years about the Cincinnati Bengals' ability to start games fast. They've largely done that this year, but they're still losing because they haven't finished games. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow, along with your host, James Rapien. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. So if you're new to the show and not already an everydayer or not one of those out there that make us your first listen, and shout out to the regulars, you can subscribe to make sure you stay up to date on all things Bengals, including news analysis. And as we're going to be doing today, a game preview. Today's game preview will be brought to you by FanDuel, where you can place a $5 bet to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You can check it out right now at FanDuel.com to get started. And James, over the years, even this year, we talk a lot when we have these game previews about, can they get off to a fast start? Can they control the game script? Can they get into the kind of game they want to play? And this year, they've had their ups and downs. With the last few weeks, at least, they've checked off the fast start checklist, at least on offense, even at times on defense. Take Baltimore, for example. They got a couple stops in the first half, and the offense scored early and then sputtered a little bit. But the bigger issue, perhaps, is the way they're finishing games, both on offense and on defense. Obviously, on defense, they're not getting the stops they need, period. That's very cut and dry. Everybody can see that. And despite the offense putting the team in position in each of these games to get a defensive stop and win the game, or have 3 different 10-point leads in the second half against Baltimore, the offense hasn't been able to get that last drive, that last play in the fourth quarter either. And so, where we spend a lot of time talking about fast starts, when we're talking about this New York Giants game on Sunday Night Football this week, we're also going to be talking about the way they finished the game. And that has been a big Achilles heel for this team this year.
It's why they've not won every game, literally. If you execute down the stretch, if you don't get sacked with 7 minutes to go against the Patriots, if you don't have the fumble in the fourth quarter or the penalty on 4th and 16 against the Chiefs, week 3, they could not get a stop, and on offense, not being able to execute in the red zone. So they kind of closed that game on offense as best they could, but they were trailing the entire time. So you're right. Like they've had these chances, these opportunities, and even in Carolina, their lone win, and you've done this, and it was nitpicky because they won, but it's true. Like they left the door open for another 5 extra minutes than they needed to. And so starting fast is still huge. It's still really important, especially on the road, primetime, MetLife Stadium, a Giants team that is feeling pretty darn good about itself after what happened against Seattle last week and winning in that game. But you have to finish. And finish, depending on the week, and I'm certainly not saying this week, finishing might mean executing in the third quarter against the Panthers when you have a chance to put the dagger in. Finishing could mean executing down the stretch of the fourth quarter with 3:01 left, 1st and 15. You have the ball in plus territory and a chance to at least build on your lead and maybe go up by 10 again against the Ravens and not having that turnover. So this isn't just a defense thing. This is an overall execution thing, and it's why the Bengals are 1-4, because they have not been able to execute down the stretch. Now, is that realistic for the offense to do after scoring 4 straight touchdowns against a Ravens defense? Like I get it's not that simple, but in these games with the margin for error or lack thereof, because there hasn't been any margin for error, you have to be better down the stretch. And I think they know that. There are veterans in that locker room right now that I know feel like they need to execute better offensively and defensively. Obviously, we know the defensive part, but offensively as well down the stretch when it's winning time, and they'll try to do that on Sunday. But yeah, it's a huge storyline, and it's so funny. Jake, full disclosure, Jake came up with this topic and has been on it this week, and the Bengals are too. Multiple players, like I said, feel that way, that they have to close games, finish the games, regardless of how the defense is playing. This offense feels like it needs to close games better.
Yeah, and it's not Just the offense, obviously. As everybody knows, the defense hasn't been living up to its side of the ball, its side of the bargain or whatever, doing its job, however you want to say it. We'll talk about what is happening on the defensive side of the ball this week and the tests they face in the New York Giants, of course. But I went back and I looked at every third down play the Bengals have had in the fourth quarter, and it's guys giving up key pressures. They're holding up pretty well throughout the game, and then you get a quick pressure on a key third down. And it's not even like the 3rd and 15s where this is happening necessarily. Some of them are 3rd and manageables, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5. They haven't had very many opportunities for third downs in the fourth quarter, but I think it was 13 plays or so that I went back and looked at. I think they've converted like 3, one of them on a penalty, a couple of them on passing plays. And it's been week 1. It was, Joe Burrow not quite feeling the game at the right speed and being rushed a little bit, or there being a timely pressure from the New England Patriots. Week 2, it's a lot of untimely pressures given up by the offensive line that's played a mostly manageable game. And that was a trend. And then it's getting behind the sticks and having 3rd and forever where you don't really have a chance. And so then that's not even a third down issue at that point, but their success rate on third downs in the fourth quarter is miserable. They're just not converting in those key moments late in games. And where you could point to the first half against Baltimore, where Cincinnati burned some drives on offense early in that game. And maybe if they instead score some points there, they build even more of a cushion. Or you can point to the interception in the fourth quarter, where you can point to their inability to get ahead of the chains and convert. And they had 1 third down in the fourth quarter against Baltimore. And it was at the end of regulation where they run a draw play and then they punt the ball. And so it's not like they've had a ton of opportunities here, but when we're talking about clutch time and winning time, whatever you want to call it, at the end of games, for whatever reason, coincidence or not, that is where the Bengals are coming up short. And it's not just the offense or the defense either. I mean, it's even Ryan Rico mishandling a hold for the first time in his NFL career. It's every single unit. It's Evan McPherson missing a kickoff in the third quarter, which I know isn't the fourth quarter, but I mean, everybody has a hand in this on this team right now, which is why when Joe Burrow's asked what needs to be better for this team to get back to championship form, his answer is everything. It's not finger pointing. It's not, we're controlling what we're controlling. We're playing well on offense right now. It's everything needs to be better. And he's right, because you can point to these moments where every single unit has had its issues, even if we know that the biggest reason they're 1-4 is on the defensive side of the ball. Everyone has had a hand in it for sure.
Are we sure that Evan kick didn't work out well, though? We're talking about the one that worked out well?
Against Baltimore, no. I'm talking about the one that led to the big Austin Eckler kick return before Eckler left the game.
Oh, you're talking about that. I gotcha. Okay. I was like the Baltimore one that he mishit but didn't say that.
No.
I got
the Washington one where he said later that he was trying to kick it into the end zone and missed it.
Yeah. I gotcha. No, just clarifying, and probably all of our listeners understood what you were saying and I just didn't. But yeah, it's winning time, baby. The winning time is the right time when you got to go get it. And right now, this team, they're flawed enough where it's a little bit of everything, like you said, like Joe said, where they need to be perfect when it's time to win. Well, maybe they're up 17 on the Giants early in the fourth quarter. You know what you can't do? You can't turn the ball over.
Go score again is what I'm going to be saying.
No doubt. And that's going to have to be the mentality with the Giants, the Browns, and then the Eagles. And guess what? Those are your next 3 games, all 3 of them. You could see the Bengals winning. You could also see them losing, and there are paths to both. And when you're a flawed team where things aren't going right, and there's all of these little things that have cost you down the stretch of games in key moments, that's the reality you're facing right now. I mean, I saw the graphic. The Texans have been outscored by 12. The Bengals have been outscored by 5. The Texans are 4-1, and the Bengals are 1-4. How do you dig yourself out of that? How do you climb out of it? You can't dig yourself out. How do you climb out of this hole? Well, one, you got to have a ladder. I think they do have that. And you got to get to climbing. And the reason they're in such a hole is because of the lack of execution in key moments. And so that's certainly what Jake and I will be looking for on Sunday. We have a lot more to discuss defensively, offensively. Man, the defense. Can they get a stop? We'll discuss that and much, much more coming up next.
With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. And now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for just $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. You can sign up today at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
Today's show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy the way it should be. The best place to get real money with sports involved. And how do you do that? Well, you do it with daily fantasy. And that's all you do with PrizePicks is you don't have to worry about injuries. All you do is look at the PrizePicks projections and pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on PrizePicks. So maybe you think that Justin Jefferson is going to get more than 83.5 yards next week, or that Jordan Mason is going to run for more than 75.5 yards. You can put those two together and boom, start winning today with PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's it. You play a $5 lineup and boom, you get $50 instantly. All you have to do is download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's the PrizePicks app. Code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 deposit. PrizePicks, run your game.
James, as we talk about this offense and keys to victory in this game, and we look at where the challenges will be for the offense in this game, obviously that starts with the New York Giants defensive line and what the plan is for Dexter Lawrence and how they're going to make sure they have double teams for Dexter Lawrence and whatever help is needed to deal with Brian Burns or Azeez Ojulari, who will be stepping in for the likely injured Kayvon Thibodeau, who's, I think, almost certainly going to miss this game. A few players in that secondary who have been up and down, but as we talked about with Patricia on the crossover, very athletic defense for the Giants. Mm-hmm. But for the Bengals, stop me if you've heard this before, expectations are high. Just go score 40, and then there's no drama. Well, hopefully.
Yeah, I do agree there. I think if this offense, I think it's going to be harder to do that this week. I just do. I think the Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns tandem is just, you have the edge, and even without Kayvon Thibodeau, like you mentioned, you have the edge and you have the rusher up the middle. That's a tough thing to deal with. And they have other guys too. So it's doable. I do think that this offense is playing at that kind of level. This offensive line should be able to do what they've done to a certain degree. At the same time, they do have some game wreckers on that defensive front. And that's really the only, like if you said, oh, well, the Giants have the best secondary, but they can't rush the passer, I wouldn't be that worried. Like I think Joe would just be able to handle it. And Joe's been really good against pressure, elite against pressure. But that up the middle stuff that Dexter Lawrence could potentially bring makes it harder. And so, I mean, that's Chris Jones light over there. And I don't even know if he's light. I mean, he's a wrecker like Chris Jones. So saying drop 40, I think that's tough. And that's coming from me, who's always bullish on this offense. At the same time, should they score? Absolutely. I think they should score. That secondary shouldn't be able to contain Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And if that does happen, well, they have other answers to the test as well. And I think that's the beauty of this offense right now with the way Joe is seeing it. Even if they are getting some pressure on him, I think he'll be able to dial up the right things to still move the ball.
The Bengals have dealt with this kind of front this year. I think the Chiefs are maybe a little bit worse, but still there's Chris Jones there. But the thing that's a little bit concerning is with these guys they have on that front for the New York Giants, they are number one in the NFL. This was a Warren Sharp stat I saw in havoc rate on defense, which is sacks and tackles for loss and turnovers, I think. The Bengals are dead last in this category, which fits your priors, right? That's what you would expect about this Bengals defense. They're not making plays. We will get there, I promise. But Cincinnati Bengals, according to DVOA, have the second best offense in the NFL. And Joe Burrow is playing like, at least the last few weeks, the best quarterback in the NFL. And yes, you need those plays in crunch time in the fourth quarter, but the Bengals did have a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Ravens before things went off the rails. You can't have the fumble against the Chiefs. You can't have that pick against the Ravens. But the Giants defense, despite all of this, is only 19th in DVOA on the defensive side of the ball. They have vulnerabilities on that team from a linebacker perspective. You like the Bengals wide receivers in this game in the matchups against the secondary pieces for the New York Giants. So it's really, can we control the defensive line of those Giants? Can we stay ahead of the chains? And one way I think the Bengals need to do that this week, as Chase Brown, by the way, was limited with a quadriceps injury on Thursday. We'll see if he is going to be able to recover and practice on Friday and what his game status is. We don't have further information about that at the time of recording. But one way you can stay ahead of the chains here is you have a defense that, as Mike Zantagata, our regular film guest, pointed out on Twitter on Thursday, loves to get upfield. And in the past, just go back to last year's games against like San Francisco 49ers, for example, their games against the Raiders in the past, that the Colts game last year, when you play these defenses that like to get upfield, the Bengals have really been able to punish those teams in the running game. And while I still think, this is going to be a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins game, getting behind the chains is one thing that you really don't want to do against this defense with Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns. So if they can use that running game and stay efficient on early downs, not just with the running game, but if the running game can be part of it and they can run the ball effectively, that would help a lot to help deal with a potent pass rush in New York.
Jake wants to run the ball 3 straight times with the game on the line. Is it the right call? No, I'm just kidding. He's not amused. He's not amused at all by that. No, I think, one, I think you're right. And two, it goes hand in hand with all of these different pieces that they can use. And that is assuming, and I saw Chase Brown in the locker room smiling. So I'm gonna base that on hopefully the quad means, and he was limited because he got some treatment on it and didn't even tweak it. I don't even want to go that far, but who knows, right? But so we'll monitor that. The good news is Zach Moss back. And so if you have those two guys, you're right. I mean, they've been so efficient on the ground. And if you can do that and put Joe Burrow is dealing with 2nd and 5, well, that's way, way better than an incomplete because there's a pressure. It's 2nd and 10. And now you're feeling a little behind the chains, or there's a tackle for loss, or whatever the case is. So, no, I agree. And I think that these running backs, one, I do think Zach Moss is going to play, just the vibes around it. Obviously, returning to practice Thursday is a big part of it, but I felt like he was on Wednesday as well, even though he was out, still out there and moving around and all of those things. You just give him an extra day. But these running backs, we've seen what Chase can do from an explosive element, but having another running back like a Zach Moss who's so reliable as a pass catcher that you have trust in, it's huge in these matchups because you mentioned the upfield. Can they get the screen game working a little? Is this the week where Chase Brown maybe takes a screen a long way? Who knows? But it would be nice to have that in the bag as well. It hasn't necessarily worked out that way a ton, but it would be nice if it did on Sunday.
Yeah, really keeping an eye on both of those Bengals running backs, though. As far as injuries go, because this is a position when Zach Moss went down in that game, it was like, oh boy, here's another position where we were concerned about the depth, and the depth is about to be tested. Hopefully that remains a depth part of the roster that they don't need to test this week, and those two guys stay.
They don't have
able
any
to
depth.
play at a high level.
They have no depth behind those two guys as running backs go. If you need Travion to pass protect a little bit, fine, but you're not. You don't want to give him touches. And I'm not trying to be mean to him, but he's a special teamer and a pass protector more than anything.
Yeah. Some good matchups, though. Amarius Mims, Brian Burns out there. The interior dealing with Dexter Lawrence. I like the Bengals receivers in this game, especially Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, you're going to like them most weeks, but especially this week, I think you should be able to lean on at least one of those guys or make the Giants do the pick your poison kind of thing. So we will talk about the defense, which has a job ahead of it. They need to stop being putrid on that side of the ball. We will finish the show with what the defense needs to do to win this game coming up next. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, the Cincinnati Bengals, well, we all know they're favored by 3.5 points on the road in Sunday Night Football. We all know Daniel Jones has a dreadful record in prime time, and the Bengals generally are pretty good in prime time with Joe Burrow. But if you want to get beyond the basics, beyond the over-under at 47.5 points, you can take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals to score in all 4 quarters, perhaps at plus 135 on FanDuel. And if you really don't have any confidence in the Bengals defense, each team to score in all 4 quarters, if you think there will be no goose eggs on that scoreboard, well, that's plus 800 right now at FanDuel. From props to the game itself, FanDuel has everything you could be looking for, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet with America's #1 sportsbook. You can check it all out today at FanDuel.com.
All right, Jake, let's get to this defense. Let's talk about the defense. The defense that Mike Hilton on Wednesday said they have to tackle, and that they haven't been tackling. They've been worrying about the strip, and that they've been playing like bleep. And I think everyone would agree with that. And so combine that with Cam Taylor-Britt saying how they need to force turnovers. It kind of aligns. Be sound on defense, make tackles. 2, create a little havoc because you haven't made any plays. You haven't created any plays. You haven't put yourself in position to make plays or make the offense uncomfortable. And that's why they're what they are right now, which is just, you said putrid, whatever you want to use, whatever adjective you want to use to describe it probably fits as long as it's a bad one, a struggling one. Do you think this defense is going to rebound a little bit now with Sheldon Rankins practicing for back-to-back days, and I expect them to play on Sunday, as healthy as they've been against Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, and company?
I mean, the New York Giants don't have the best offense in the NFL, and Malik Neighbors is still in concussion protocol at the time of recording. He did less, according to reports, during Thursday's practice than Wednesday's practice. So we'll see. I mean, you obviously need to prepare as if Malik Neighbors is going to play, and it's not like he's the only receiver on that team. They had some guys step up last week. We've talked about Wan'Dale Robinson. We've talked about Darius Slayton. And going to Tyrone Tracy at running back was a big shot in the arm for that Giants offense. But this isn't a top offense. Just to give the defense a little bit of grace after I called them putrid, because we like to be fair, the Bengals have played against 3 of the top 5 offenses in the NFL. And the Bengals are a reason that these are 3 of the top 5 offenses in the NFL. But by DVOA anyway, the Baltimore Ravens have the highest ranked offensive DVOA by a lot. Washington is 3rd, right behind the Bengals. The Washington offense is seen by DVOA as almost as good as the Cincinnati Bengals offense. And if you've been watching them the last few weeks, despite Jaden Daniels having a down week in week 5, the offense on the whole is producing at a high level. Kansas City, despite everything you might think about the way Patrick Mahomes was playing early this year, has the 5th highest ranked DVOA. The New York Giants are all the way down at 17. The New York Giants defense is all the way down at 19. So when we still have high expectations for this Bengals offense, we should also have higher expectations for this Bengals defense against a team that is not a top 3 offense or top 5 offense. And the Bengals have played 2 top 3 offenses. The Carolina Panthers are way down on this ranking because the Bryce Young numbers were so terrible, but the Andy Dalton numbers will be much higher. Not that the Carolina Panthers are a good offense or anything, but anyway, point is, expectations should be higher against this Giants offense, against Daniel Jones, who has struggled in prime time, against an offensive line that hasn't been able to hold up in true pass protection situations outside of Andrew Thomas. And that is a strength-on-strength matchup, the Trey Hendrickson, Andrew Thomas matchup on the left side. But somebody else needs to win on this defensive line. We've been asking for it all year. Somebody needs to make a play, and whether it's tackling, whether it's, Sam Hubbard had that safety last week. That's awesome. But you need a little bit more when you're giving up 38 points. And so
41 points.
Yeah, I'm only counting regulation there, but yeah, 41. They need to make more plays.
Go ahead.
Because the 41 counts. You're right.
Yeah.
But, they make the field goal, then, who knows. Anyway, you need to make the plays in the key moments.
Yeah.
And they haven't done that this year.
The defense hasn't even put itself in a position to get into key moments. I think that's what's annoying. Like,
but they did against Kansas City, and, they could have made a stop against Baltimore to win the game.
Yeah, the offense came out and put them in that position. But, yeah, I get your point. They forced some turnovers. That was the one game. There's one game where they did almost enough. And almost enough probably wins all of these other games on defense, by the way. Like, if they did just that in these other situations, that we're talking about a completely different thing. So, yeah, they have to make some plays and be sound. Do the basic stuff. Do the waking up when the alarm goes off, doing the basic job of a safety, the basic job of a corner, the basic job of a defensive tackle. If they do that stuff, and we're talking about veterans. I mean, what rookie are they? I mean, it's not like they're playing a bunch of rookies a ton of time. And so McKinley Jackson will get some snaps. Obviously, Chris Jenkins, of all of the rookies, is going to get the most. Okay, I think he can be sound as DT 3 or 4, whatever. I assume it would be 3. But if you're making tackles, you're doing the sound stuff, and then you can create 1 or 2 turnovers. We're not asking for 6 turnovers here. We're not saying this offense can't move the ball up and down the field. Wreak a little havoc. Make a couple plays. Geno Stone. That's why you were here. That's why they brought you here. Von Bell, you got to be able to stick with your guy in an obvious situation where he's streaking down the field. Like, that's the basic stuff where why did you hesitate? It wasn't just like people were complaining that Von was too slow on that Charlie Kolar play. No, he hesitated and didn't flip his hips and didn't go. Like, that's more of a mental thing than it was a physical thing for me, because it wasn't like they started running at the same time or close to it. So, yeah, I think that stuff, please clean that stuff up and force a turnover or 2. If so, I think they'll be fine. I do. This is a team that they should beat. Will they? I don't know. They should have beat the Patriots, and they didn't. They put themselves in position to beat the Chiefs and the Ravens, and they didn't. And they couldn't stop anyone that was in a Commander's uniform on Monday Night Football. So the bar is low, but they're as healthy as they've been. And so I'm expecting them to rebound a little bit and be a little better on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, we're just asking for the basics. Tackle, be in a position to make a tackle. Don't take bad angles. I mean, the Bengals are talking about this too. Players are talking about it. They got to take better angles. Yeah, you got to take better angles. Everybody can see that. Get a pass rush. The Bengals have the second worst pass rush, according to PFF, in the NFL this year. With
who's
all
worse?
that money.
You know who's worse?
Carolina.
Oh. And they traded. So Carolina traded their guy, Brian Burns, who you're going to have to deal with on Sunday. Doesn't look like a bad deal, by the way. Second. I know they had to pay him, but it was like a second. They swapped 5s and gave up a 4. So not bad.
Get a pass rush. Like, show up. You got everybody now on the defensive line, right? If Sheldon Rankins continues in the direction we think he's going this week.
Need Rankins to give you some juice now. Like, that's why you signed him. You didn't sign
Miles Murphy and these rotational, like Chris Jenkins, like any McKinley Jackson, name a guy. Somebody do something. That's all. But
Rankins was brought in to rush
Rankins was paid. That's
on the interior, right? And so I get it with Miles and Chris and McKinley. Like, I get it. And you would love that. Joseph Osai, contract year. Go make some money, man. So you need some juice, a little juice. And it wouldn't be bad if Cam Taylor-Britt brought a little juice as well.
Trey Hendrickson, take over a game. Been a while since we've seen that. I mean, we did see it against the Chiefs, but
put him on the other side.
That too.
Put him on the other side.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Do it. I'm serious. Do it.
Like, give him like 8 snaps over there.
8 snaps on pass rush downs. Yeah, do it. Why not?
Or at least a couple, and see if he can be effective.
Sure.
Like, if he's not effective, fine. Put him back over there with
a little
Thomas,
pressure.
But
yep.
He can beat good tackles too. I'm just saying, I don't care where it comes from. Somebody on this defense needs to make a play. Yep. And again, I agree with you. This is a game they should win. But we said that about many games this year, and they have not come up on the right side of that coin.
Nope, they haven't. So we'll see if they get it done on Sunday night.
We'll have your takeaways after the game, after Sunday Night Football in Where is the stadium now? It's not the Meadowlands anymore, right? Somewhere
You
in
said
New
that
Jersey.
the other day.
Yeah. I realized it was wrong as soon as I said it.
MetLife is in East Rutherford.
All right.
Jersey.
I don't know why they call these teams New York, but the Bengals were playing the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. We will have your takeaways immediately following that game here on Locked On Bengals. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.